This video is going to be about enzyme inhibitors. So molecules that are going to bind covalently to enzymes, they're typically going to inhibit those enzymes in a way that's irreversible. But what we're looking at today is going to be when these molecules interact with enzymes in a weak way, which makes these actual reversible processes. So the first one that we're going to look at is something called competitive inhibition. So competitive inhibitors are typically going to be molecules that are pretty similar structurally to the substrate for an enzyme and will compete with that substrate for binding to the enzyme's active site. So for example, if this is the active site on our enzyme right here, we can say that maybe our actual substrate looks like this, and then maybe our competitive inhibitor looks like that. So these both have parts which are able to bind to this active site. So what will happen is the competitive inhibitor will bind to the active site and keep the substrate from being able to get in. And so that's how this is going to actually inhibit this enzyme. And so it's going to make this enzyme less productive by preventing interactions between the enzyme and the substrate. So something that makes competitive inhibition unique is that competitive inhibition can be kind of reversed or overcome by increasing the concentration of your substrate. Because if you increase your concentration of your substrate, you make it more likely that the substrate will bump into the enzyme's active site and actually bind than for the competitive inhibitor to end up in the active site and bind. So moving on to non-competitive inhibition. Non-competitive inhibition is different in that the inhibitor doesn't actually bind to the active site in this one. So in this case, the inhibitor will bind to a different site on the enzyme. And so when it binds to this other regulatory site, it's going to cause the enzyme to change shape. So now the enzyme has changed its shape, so maybe the active site looks like that now. So now the active site isn't as, it's not as well equipped to be able to bind to the substrate, so it's not going to be able to bind to as many substrates, and it's not going to be as effective at carrying out its job as it was before this non-competitive inhibitor was binding to it. So just to review, competitive inhibition is a substrate analog, so something that looks like the substrate binding to the active site of the enzyme and preventing the substrate from actually binding, and that can be overcome by increasing substrate concentration. Whereas non-competitive inhibition is the inhibitor binding to a different regulatory site that's not the active site on the enzyme, and non-competitive inhibition cannot be overcome by increasing substrate concentrations. I hope you found this video really helpful. The concepts and information presented in these videos will be true regardless of what biology course you're taking. However, the material we covered in this video is specifically referencing material covered in Campbell Biology's 11th edition. Remember that if you are an enrolled Baylor student, we do offer free tutoring on the first floor of the Sid Richardson building, and you can schedule a free 30-minute appointment to have one-on-one tutoring online, or you can stop by during any of our business hours. For more information about the services we provide, you can go to our website at www.baylor.edu/tutoring. Thank you.